I just want to reiterate the mayor's thanks to everybody for coming today, and I'm not going to take much time because we really do want to stay on schedule, and I think Mayor Dinkins provided us with a perfect introduction for the day's panels. This is a particularly important time in American history, and I just want to reiterate that. I want everybody to focus on that. And I want everybody to understand that part of today's discussion needs to be carried on after we leave this forum. The idea today is to get some of the best and brightest minds in public service, which we've managed to do, to talk about the prospects for the economic recovery in our region. Everybody here knows that the New York metropolitan region, including New York and New Jersey and Nassau County, has been very hard hit by this recession. And it's going to take a lot more than simply Washington promising us things that they tend not to deliver on for us to work our way out of this recession. It's going to be the voices of the people in this room and the brilliant ideas of people who are on our panels today. So I am not going to take any more time because I think it's important for everybody to hear what we're about to hear from this panel. I'm going to briefly thank SEPA and especially the Rockefeller Foundation for supporting our forum today, which we could not have managed without really the support of Darren Walker and his staff in the Rockefeller Foundation. And I want to thank my colleague, Professor Dorian Warren, who's going to be moderating this panel. When I came back to Columbia, I was sort of saddened by the prospect of going to a new office and not being next to people I had been next to for probably 20 years, Professor Flora Davidson, who's here today, and Dean Catherine Yudrakis. And I really didn't think I was going to meet anybody that could, they can't take their place, but at least entertain me, inform me, and educate me. Dorian Warren, he's managed to do that. And I'm just grateful to have him as a colleague here at Columbia, and I know those of you who have had his classes know what an extraordinary professor is. Without any further ado, I'm going to ask Dorian to come up and introduce his panelists. Thank you, everybody, for coming today.
Thank you, Esther, for that very lovely introduction. Thanks all of you for joining us. We have a panel this morning or this afternoon of what we think are some of the most innovative and transformative leaders. And so you'll be hearing from them briefly. The first panel today will focus on President Obama's economic recovery agenda from the metro region. So we're going to hear from the mayors of Philadelphia, Trenton, and the former county executive of Nassau County. I'll briefly introduce each of them. Their longer bios are in your programs. Michael Nutter, the 98th mayor of Philadelphia, has set a course for America's 6th largest city aimed at growing the regional economy in a sustainable manner, dramatically improving public safety, and investing in education and workforce development. He is without question one of the most innovative mayors in the country. Since taking office in January 2008, he has implemented a crime-fighting strategy that has seen a sharp decline in the homicide rate and continuing reductions in other violent crime. He has committed the city and the Philadelphia School District to increase the school graduation rate by 50% in 5 to 7 years, and to double the college attainment rate in 5 to 10 years. And in response to the deepest recession in generations, he has launched a nationally recognized mortgage foreclosure program that links at-risk homeowners with housing counseling and related services. Born in Philadelphia in 1957, Michael Nutter grew up in West Philadelphia with his parents, who instilled in him a deep interest in community service, his sister and a grandmother. An academic scholarship recipient, he graduated from St. Joseph's Preparatory High School, and in 1979, he graduated from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Following Mayor Nutter will be Mayor Palmer. Douglas Palmer took the helm of leadership in Trenton, New Jersey, the capital city of that state, on July 1, 1990. Trenton's first African-American mayor, Mayor Palmer has been reelected 4 times since to lead a sustained revitalization effort that has reshaped neighborhoods, lowered unemployment, and initiated sophisticated innovations across the spectrum of municipal government. He is the former president of the National Conference of Democratic Mayors, and most recently the immediate past president of the bipartisan United States Conference of Mayors, providing extraordinary leadership around issues of national urban policy. Mayor Palmer was born and raised in Trenton. He's a graduate of Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, where he received a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management in 1973. Last but not least on our panel is Thomas Swazi, who served as the Nassau County Executive from 2001 to 2009. He is a government reformer, attorney, certified public accountant, and former 8-year mayor of Glen Cove. Mr. Swazi was named Governings Magazine's 2005 Public Official of the Year for his innovative initiatives in Nassau, which has a population of over 1.3 million, larger than 11 states, and a $2.5 billion budget, greater also than 11 states. Before Mr. Swazi came into office, Nassau had been rated, quote, the worst run county in the nation. Within a year, he turned a $428 million deficit into a balanced budget, leading one of the most successful financial turnarounds in the country. He eliminated wasteful contracts, cut the workforce to the smallest in 30 years, and achieved historic labor concessions. Nassau is the only county in New York that did not raise taxes for 5 years in a row, and that received 13 bond upgrades in 5 years, more than any county in the nation. He is a graduate of Boston College and Fordham School of Law. So let's welcome our 3 mayors as we begin.
Dr. Warren, thank you very, very much, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, I fully understand I don't bring the star power of Chairman Rangel, but give me a little bit of break up here. He is definitely a tough act to follow. Let me just say first, it really is an honor to have been asked to participate in Mayor Dinkins' annual public policy forum here at Columbia. Columbia, as I mentioned to my good friend Victoria, for all across the nation and around the world, a tremendous reputation as an educational institution, and I'm really enjoying my time here. And of course, any time spent with Mayor Dinkins, for those of us in public service, I had the occasion to meet with him shortly after I was elected, but not yet sworn in. And it's one of the most memorable meetings that I've had in my entire public service career. He is, in fact, living history, and I know that you get a tremendous benefit from him. Dr. Fuchs, thank you very, very much. And I complimented Dr. Fuchs from the earlier session, her ability to just stand up and cause people to collapse their questions or whatever it is that they're talking about. I haven't seen a look like that since I was about 6 from Catalina Nutter, and I knew exactly what that meant. I was about to sit down myself. So to my 2 colleagues up here, Tom and Doug, and David Stone, Maxine Griffin. I didn't realize I knew so many people here at Columbia. Let me talk a little bit about a little slightly smaller city to the south, which I came here today, notwithstanding the fact that just a little while ago, this great city, and I admire your mayor tremendously, this great city hurt my feelings quite significantly back in November. We were all prepared for a back-to-back, and just kind of didn't work out. Congratulations to New York in the World Series. Let me talk a little bit about the nation's first capital and the soon-to-be 5th largest city in the United States of America, also known as Philadelphia. I came into office in January of 2008, coming off a big general election win, and about 8 months later, the federal government shared with us that the Great Recession, as we refer to it, at least in Philadelphia, had started in December of 2007. I was elected in November of 2007, and no one was kind enough to mention to me that the country had just gone into a recession, which we found out a few months later. But notwithstanding that, We started to figure that out, actually, that something was going on as early as the spring of 2008, when we noticed that our real estate transfer taxes had just taken a precipitous drop and actually had adjusted our estimate even in the spring of 2008. All the other tax revenues were going in the right direction, which was up, or at least according to estimate. But there was something unusual going on the real estate side. We made our adjustments, kept going on, put forward my first budget on Valentine's Day. I gave out actually roses to the members of City Council. It was a new day, a new way, a great spirit of partnership and friendship, and made investments in the police department, fire services, EMS, emergency services, community college. As the doctor mentioned, I'm kind of big on education. Our community college had not been getting a proper level of support. In Philadelphia, made investments there. Fairmount Park, arts and culture. Restored the Office of Art and Culture, which the previous administration had actually closed. Said I would do that during the campaign, and did that, and a number of other things. By the summer of 2008, we really knew that we were having a problem because all the other tax revenue sources had also started dropping like a rock. This had not yet been named, so we didn't know what was going on. And on September 11th, 2008, just happened to be the day, I decided to announce to the citizens what we were seeing during the course of the summer. They needed to know publicly. The city of Philadelphia was experiencing at least a $450 million deficit over our 5-year plan. Philadelphia, unlike virtually any other city in America, we not only have a balanced budget requirement in our home rule charter, but according to state statute, we actually have to produce 5-year plans. And every year in the 5-year plan must also be balanced. It's great for fiscal discipline. It's terrible if you want to do one-time fixes or move money around and get the budget and the 5-year plan all approved by a state oversight entity appointed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the governor and each of the 4 legislative caucuses in the General Assembly. So they don't mess around, and they have the authority actually to withhold certain funds from the city if they don't approve our plan. So we take it's called PICA, Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Agency. That's why we call them PICA, because no one wants to say that more than once a day. We take them very seriously, and on our way at least to the 2008 World Series, we had to make a choice after telling the public that we had a $450 million 5-year plan deficit in September, that the number had grown to 650 to 850. We then gave a range in October. And as the Phillies were marching on to the World Series, and as we were about to experience the most historic election in most of our lifetimes, we decided that, notwithstanding our public announcement, that we would give the public the final number at the end of October. We didn't think it was too bright to announce what that number was in the middle of the World Series and the election. And so 2 days after Senator Obama was president-elect, we announced on November 6th the city of Philadelphia was now seeing a $1 billion 5-year plan deficit, a $100 million current fiscal year deficit, and it was the largest gaping hole in our city budget mid-year in the city's history. We took swift action. We had had 13 straight years of wage and business tax reductions in the city. I've been a leading advocate for reducing the tax burden in Philadelphia for over a decade. And other than laying people off, the toughest decision was to announce that we were going to suspend our tax reduction program for the first time since Ed Rangel was mayor. That we would reduce the size of the government, cut back on a variety of services, some layoffs, and significantly reduce our costs. We actually closed that gap in December, swift action by our city council, and a number of changes that we made. Life went on. January came, new budget coming around. We pushed that budget back because we had done so much significant harm to our city services that we wanted to give the public an opportunity, and I don't really strongly recommend this for any of you thinking about going into public service. We had 8 town hall meetings to listen to the public's concerns about what we had done and to get their insight about what we were about to do in the upcoming budget. Those were wonderful sessions, 2.5 hours, 500 plus people. to scream at me for 2.5 hours to tell me and our administration just how stupid we were. It's a quite unique experience. But we used that time to then have more focused workshops that I did not attend, facilitated, and gave the public an opportunity to try to figure out the same dilemma that we were trying to figure out, which is take $100 and assign points to various services. And you, the public, try to figure out how to balance the budget. Want more police? Wonderful. Tell us what you're going to cut. You want all libraries open? Love libraries. You want all the rec centers open, all our swimming pools? Everybody wants and wants and wants and wants. And we gave the public an opportunity to have an exercise and a facilitated workshop how to balance the budget. Virtually no one could without either dramatically cutting services or raising taxes. Most public opinion polls, not ours, showed the public at virtually a 50-50 on whether the city should cut taxes, cut services, or raise taxes, which is pretty much where we were within the administration. And we were in the middle of, in the first year I was in office, June 30 is the end of our fiscal year. We're on a July 1, June 30 year. All 4 of our municipal union contracts were expiring on June 30 at the same time. We subsequently got 1-year contracts out of all of our unions because we did not want to lock in long-term. Again, context, we didn't know what was going on, but we knew we didn't want long-term contracts. Turned out to be a pretty genius move. Again, everyone thought that we were pretty stupid to do that. We took 1-year contracts. They wanted multis. We wanted 1. We got 1, and pretty much kept the status quo because what we really wanted to do was to focus in on the 2 biggest budget busters, at least for our city, our pension and healthcare costs. Pension and healthcare costs consume 25% of the entire city budget for the city of Philadelphia, and we needed to get that under control. And so we took the 1-year contract in an effort to basically buy ourselves a 1.5 years of time to be able to focus in on those issues, and I'll come back to that in a second. Since 2009, up to fiscal year 2009 to the current year, we've cut $218 million in spending. We've reduced the size of the government by nearly 1,000 full-time employees, and we continue to not only shrink our government, but also reduce our costs. But we did have some good things happen at the same time. And so managing through the financial crisis, you still have things you need to get done. The government doesn't close. You can't put it on temporary hold and say, we'll get back to you as soon as we figure out what else is going on. So while that was all happening, during the campaign, Philadelphia unfortunately saw its crime rate going up year after year after year. New York City and a number of other cities across the country, their crime rate was going down. There were 5 of us in a Democratic primary. I said that we could actually do something about it. Most of the other candidates said, well, may take 5 years, may take 10 years. I said that we could actually do something about crime in 8 weeks. That actually got a little attention, and people either thought he's really smart or there's really something wrong with him. Here are the numbers. In the 2 years that I've been in office, homicides are down 23%. Shootings were down 11% last year. Every major crime category in Philadelphia is down over the past few years. We hired the best police commissioner we could find. I think he's the best in the United States of America, other than Commissioner Kelly, and who's a good friend, and we've learned a great deal from him. I actually talked a lot about New York City in the course of the campaign, that if you could reduce your homicides from 10 years ago to over 2,000 to somewhere between 400 and 500, and you have 8 times, 7-8 times the population of Philadelphia, that we could actually do something about crime. On education, college degree attainment is up 3%, as well as graduation over the past couple years, and we still have a lot of work to do. We announced GreenWorks Philadelphia back in April, our plan to make Philadelphia the #1 green city in the United States of America. Recycling, when I came in office, was at 7%. It's now at plus 16% and growing. Last year, we were paying recyclers to take our recycling 33 cents a ton out of the city. A month ago, the market changed and in our favor. They now pay us $5.04 a ton to take our recycling. We announced single stream recycling a year ago, and that has gone pretty well. And this month, today, starts Philadelphia Recycling Rewards, a new partnership with Recycle Bank, which is a company actually started in Philadelphia. The more you recycle in your neighborhood by areas, you'll actually get coupons, discount cards, and a variety of other exciting give-backs. Much like some of the credit card companies do, we're actually going to give people back in the form of those kinds of things, money or certainly a card to spend things on if you recycle. Recycling saves us money, both in landfill costs, $68 a ton to put your trash in a landfill, versus now $505.04 to collect it. We said that we'd start a 311 contact center, much like New York and Chicago and a number of other cities. We said we'd do it in a year. And on December 31st, 2008, we opened our 311 call center for about $2 million. And there are a bunch of cities across America trying to figure out how we did that. The doctor mentioned our mortgage foreclosure program. Mayor Bloomberg actually invited me up to New York last year when he announced New York's mortgage foreclosure program, which is modeled after Philadelphia's program, and a number of other cities and states across the country have sought our information or started programs similar to ours. We're trying to convince the White House to scale it up and take it national because so many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people continue, unfortunately, to lose their homes. Lastly, an idea that I didn't so much steal it, I did ask permission, and I always give him credit. Mayor Daley in Chicago created the Mayor's Metropolitan Caucus. I was out in Chicago in 2005 on an exchange visit. It was one of many, many ideas that I took out of Chicago, but took that one and put it in effect. We now have a Metropolitan Caucus in the 5-county region of Philly, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery counties. All of the county commissioners and myself, 15 of us, meet now on a regular basis. We actually, for the first time, filed a joint application to get ARRA funds, and the White House is particularly interested in metro areas that are working in partnership, and I thought we could use economic recovery dollars as the driving force. It's amazing that how money can actually get people to cooperate, and we use it all the time. A lot of talk, and that's mostly what it is, about the Economic Recovery Act, whether it's working or not. Yes, it is working. Could it do better? Of course it can. Can any government program do better? Of course it could. Probably a couple of things you'd like to do better here at Columbia. Maybe not. But every public agency can always do better at what it does. We'd like the money to come quicker. The feds do enjoy making award announcements. In cities, we love making receipt announcements. And there's a little bit of a gap between when it's announced and when we get it. We just like having the money. We have received a bunch. We're still waiting for more. But there's a lot of confusion out in the marketplace. We're cutting services, laying off workers. We had to raise taxes last year, a temporary increase in the sales tax. And the public is trying to understand, if you're getting all these millions of dollars from the federal government, why are you still cutting our services and laying people off? And so, you know, as the saying goes, you know, yes, we can. On economic recovery dollars, we have to say, no, we can't. We cannot use them to plug our budget holes. States can, cities can't. A little bit of difference there. And so that's what governors do. They took the economic recovery dollars, plugged their budget holes, and try to keep services in place, while cities are either raising taxes, laying people off, cutting services, or all of the above. That is the big conundrum and challenge for us, and we actually have the bodies. You know that 80% of the country's population lives in a city. 75% of the gross domestic product comes from cities. I love all the other 66 counties of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but Philly, Pittsburgh, Erie, Center County, Scranton, and a couple others are where the people live. If you spend the money where the people are, you'll actually save jobs or create jobs and turn this country around. In some instances, we've seen, I mean, in cities, as I said to Mayor Dinkins earlier, and Chairman Rangel, you know, in cities we don't have bridges that go to nowhere. They all go somewhere. They carry people and commerce and all kinds of other activity. And so if you spend the money in cities, you'd actually get something done. So that's been a big, big fight, and my good friend Doug Palmer will probably talk about that as well. Unemployment, unfortunately, has gone up in Philadelphia. We're now at 11.2%, unfortunately, we expect that it might continue to grow. What can the feds do for cities. One, I've had all kinds of meetings with all kinds of federal officials, including at the U.S. conference. We were just an hour with President Obama and Vice President Biden. We're not asking the feds just to write a big check and send us money. What we are asking for is use the formulas that already work. CDBG, the new EECBG, and CSBG, I'll give you all these acronyms. These are all programs that exist, they work, they get the money directly to cities. You can even go and do some old stuff, UDAGs, revenue sharing. No issue, no controversy. Some of them were actually even started by Republicans many, many years ago. And so what we're asking for is a new relationship with the federal government, that cities are where the action is, and cities are what will bring this country back. Send all the money to banks, investment firms, auto. I have no complaint there. All I'm saying is you claim that they were too big to fail. We say we're too important to fail. And we're better credit risk because we don't go out of business. No one has ever gone to Washington, turned over the keys and said, hey, you pick up the trash, you run the rec centers, you do whatever you do in cities. We take care of our business. And so we're asking for a little more creativity out of Treasury with TARP funds, that we have numerous unfunded mandates. Clean water, I love clean water. We have some of the best water in the United States of America. As a matter of fact, our water is cleaner and healthier and more regulated than that water in that bottle right there, because the federal government ensures that. You want us to keep it clean? Wonderful. Send us the money to upgrade our systems to make sure that America's water supply is clean. Cities cannot do this by ourselves. Lastly, everyone is not going to work on a bridge, a road, a highway, or sit on a backhoe. I love infrastructure as much as the next person. Public service employment will put a lot of Americans back to work very quickly. When I go back to Philly today, I can assure you, when I get out of my car up on City Hall sidewalk, I can assure you that no one is going to walk up to me and say, Mayor, I need some health care. What the person is going to say is, Mayor, I need a job. And I have to be able to walk in North Philly, West Philly, South Philly, or any other place in the city of Philadelphia, and if there are 5 guys standing on a street corner, be able to walk up to them and say, you want to go to work today? And have a job ready and waiting for them. That will put millions of Americans right back to work, and it'll happen in cities. And so we need to change the relationship with the federal government. We are not the enemy. We are, in fact, are the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Nutter.
Very good. Good afternoon. It's a dread for me, and I've done it on many occasions, follow my good friend Michael Nutter after he speaks. I was hoping I could go, well, first, but I'm second, so, you know, that's just the way it goes. It's great to be here, and I just want to say this. You know, Mayor Nutter was talking about all the great people that are here and were speaking, and he said, hey, man, how did we, he said, how did we ever get invited to this? And I said, I know how you got invited because you're one of the premier mayors in this country. He's only been mayor 2 years, but I'm going to tell you, being his neighbor in Trenton, New Jersey, which is the state capital, he's one of the outstanding mayors in this country. And I know because I was the president of all of them. And I can tell you, he is one of the greatest. Also, Mayor Bloomberg is also a great mayor. You have a great, innovative mayor here, and I'm just very glad that he, every now and then, gives me some great advice. He's here because he's great. I'm here because of my relationship with my godfather right here, Mayor Dinkins. You know, Mayor Dinkins and my mother played together a long time ago, and he's from Trenton, New Jersey, and we're very proud of him, and he has always been there to answer the call for me whenever my mom would call and say, you know, David, my son's running for this or that. I've been blessed by my hometown, not only be the first African-American mayor, but I've been elected office 32 years. And so a lot of it is due to this man who would come whenever I needed him. And what a great feeling it was to have a Trenton native, person that never forgot where he came from, to be elected the first African-American mayor of New York City. And as Mike Nutter was telling me, New York was probably one of the last of the big cities to elect an African-American. And he became mayor, and he took me around in 1990 when I ran to be the first African-American mayor of my hometown. He came and campaigned for me, raised money for me, And the day I won, the night that I won, he was the first call I made, and the second call was to Barbara Sigmund, my dear friend who was the mayor of Princeton, who was related to Hale Boggs. It was Hale Boggs' daughter and Cokie Roberts' sister. So those are the two people I called. Now after saying all that, it's great to be here. But when you're mayor of your hometown, lived here all your life, and then, like I said, I've been elected 32 years, and I've been blessed to be mayor 20 years. Now, everybody in the city knows you. We're not great big like New York. We're the state capital, but everybody knows me. And that's great, Mayor, but there's a blessing and a curse to everybody knowing you. Because sometimes when you just want to get in, go to a store and you just want to get in and get out, you can't do that. And this one day, I just wanted to get in and I wanted to get out. And I could lie to y'all. I could tell you I was going to CVS, or you got Dwayne Mead, or I could tell you I was going to the farmer's market. But, I was going to a liquor store. And, I was going in the hood. I'm in the hood. I was going to the liquor store. I got to support all of my neighborhood businesses. But I just wanted to get in, and I just wanted to get out. So I, pull my collar up, and I, have my head down, and as soon as I put my hand on the door, I hear a voice. Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir. He says, can I ask you a question? And I said, look, brother, I said, I'm going in here, when I come out, I'll be glad to answer any question you have. And I was in there so long that I really forgot that he was even outside. And as soon as I walk out, I hear, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor. Damn. Can I ask you a question now? I said, yes, sir. What's the question? He said, Mr. Mayor, I want to know, what's the greatest nation in the world? I said, what's the greatest nation in the world? United States of America. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. And he says, no, sir, it's not. And I said, well, brother, what's the greatest nation in the world? And he looked at me right in the face and he said, Mr. Mayor, the greatest nation in the world is a donation. I said, all right, man, you got me on that one. Here, brother, here. But he was right. Because sometimes a person could have blessed with money and they can donate to causes. Other times they can donate their time. And what America's cities are saying is that, we want a donation, but that donation is an investment. And just to tell you, Mayor Nutter talked about the stimulus funds and certainly what his city's going through. Mine on a much smaller scale is doing that as well. We're dependent on state monies. This is state capital. 53% of Trenton's tax exempt. The state owns 40% of our land. And so we have certainly our problems. And when the state revenue goes down, it has a trickle-down effect on us. We've had to do what mayors all across the country do, and that is to lay off people, to look at furlough. Some people furloughed to cut services and do those kinds of things because you just can't tax your way out of it. So we've done all those things. But when 2008 came and I was president of the United States Conference of Mayors, we had Senator Obama, who had gotten the nomination at that time. He addressed the nation's mayors, and he said something that I'll never forget, and it's true. He said, and there was a question asked about, did you hear the word cities mentioned? Well, I didn't really hear it, but he said that day in front of the nation's mayors that cities are the solution, not the problem. And he's exactly right. It's like that famous bank robber, Willie Sutton. They asked him, Willie, why you rob banks? And he said, that's where the money is. Mayors are saying, when you look at 80% of the gross domestic product being in the metropolitan areas of cities, that's where the people are. So it makes sense that that's where you have to invest. When we look at ARA funds that are coming in, and one of the problems that we have, and as Mayor Nutter again said, people look at all this money or the announcement, not when you actually get it, of all the millions of dollars are coming. Our constituents are saying, well, you got all that money, why are you laying people off? Fact of the matter is, folks, that cities only receive directly 1% of the ARA funds, just 1%. And so we see that, in order to get America back to work, in order to strengthen the metro economies, you're going to have to put the funds and the money where the people are. And as we met with President Obama a year ago, and we met with him just last week, we told them, and we told Congress, Congressman Rangel, our dear friend, knows, and Speaker Pelosi and Senator Reid, we told them a year ago, if you want to get people back to work, which is critically important, you're going to have to give some of the money directly to cities. And we know how to spend it. And we told them, we said, look, the states, and look, I love the states. You know, I love I love our governor. We got a new governor now. Corzine got beat. I like our governor. I didn't say I dislike him. I like him right now. He's been in office 2 weeks. We'll see. But we said the states are just going to take that money that you give them, and they're just going to backhold their budgets. And that is a lot what they did. Or if there was transportation money that came through, instead of, parceling that money out to upstate here, you need some votes. I'm not saying it happens in New York or even New Jersey. I'm talking about other states. But instead of parsing it out there and building roads where you have more deer than people, invest in our crumbling infrastructure, which our engineers have said we got a D+ in terms of our infrastructure, bridges collapsing. Put that money where the people are, where the jobs are, to have money come direct. And so as we look now at a second year of stimulus, we're looking at the House and the Senate passing a jobs bill. The United States Conference of Mayors and mayors across this country, led by your mayor and others, are saying that we want to have monies direct. And there is a formula that's been successful. Just do it like the CDBG program, which has helped, which was always threatening to be cut. Double CDBG, have that money go through cities because we already have the mechanism to put it out, and that can create jobs right away. Our Energy Environment Block Grant, which Mayor Nutter talked about, is something I'm quite proud of under my presidency. And it was, if we want to green the cities, the mayors have to lead the way, but we don't have it in our budgets to provide that. So like CDBG, we wanted the Energy Environment Block Grant that would be formula-based, which it is, coming direct to cities. That has helped us create jobs. As a matter of fact, I'm going to name, I decided not to run again. 20 years is enough of being mayor in my hometown, but before I leave in June, we're going to name a new courthouse, which we're putting solar panels on because of that money, to David N. Dinkins Courthouse. So, and so we're using money there. We also use money in a COPS program, which came direct to cities, which enabled us to do, to either hire additional cops. We hired 18 additional cops in Trenton, or save the police officers that you have. If you saw early last year, Mike Coleman, the mayor of Columbus, announced that he would be able to hire, I think it was 40 cops that were not going to be hired as a result of it. The other thing that we're talking about in infrastructure and getting where the jobs are and getting monies direct to cities, and of course, I'm not politically naive. I understand that you can't just give all the money to the cities, but we want to change the pie. Instead of 80% going to the states and 20 to the cities, let's make it 50-50, or 55 to us, 45 to them, something like that, so that we could take money. We have projects right now, infrastructure projects, green projects, that we could get the bids out right away. One of the biggest problems, and if it wasn't, and I don't care what people say, if it wasn't for President Obama doing the stimulus, if it wasn't for Congress passing it, we would be in depression right now. We wouldn't be talking about the recovery. We'd be talking about how are we going to get out of this depression. And so people could say all they want, but they had to do what was necessary to stop a depression and get us moving forward. But the statistics tell us that it won't be until 2014 until our unemployment rate is going to go to 7%. Early this year, it'll still be at 10. By 2011, the estimates say it'll be a little above 9. If you want to change the paradigm, look at investing in infrastructure, clean energy, and having some money go direct to cities so we can get the money out and be held accountable. Yeah, you can go ahead. Thank you. You're familiar about the Tiger grants. This is some discretionary money. Unfortunately, and Mayor Nutter said this, what'd you say, Mike? You said we want change. We've talked about change, but we don't want it incrementally. We want it now. We want big change. And the Tiger grants, great. There's $1.2 billion in the budget for Tiger grants that would help you develop your infrastructure and create jobs. $1.2 billion in the budget, 1,400 cities applied. Now, what are you going to do, get 7 Tiger grants? If you have 1,400 cities, and mine was one of them, Mayor Nutter's probably was, I know Mayor Bloomberg, if you have 1,400 cities apply, instead of $1.2 billion, if you want to create some jobs quick, we're saying to fund it $57 billion. That's what you need, $57 billion to fund these projects that are approved that will get people working, get development happening in cities, and create jobs and payroll taxes. We're looking at school construction the same way. Get it directly so that we can begin to build schools. And so these are the kinds of things we're talking about, as well as summer jobs. For many years, summer jobs were cut, and people were saying, oh man, juvenile crime's going up. I mean, it's not rocket science. You take away opportunities for people, you're gonna have those kinds of problems. Last year in the budget, for the first time in years, there was $1.5 billion for summer jobs. 300,000 young people got to work. Low-income individuals who would be standing or sitting around the street corners, targets for trouble and those things. And you know what they do? Now y'all got kids. Kids get their money. They're not putting it in their 401k. They're spending it. And that's what you need them to do. And so this year they cut the money in half, about $500,000, and the mayors of this country are saying fully funded the $1.2 billion so that you can continue to hire more young people. And so there's small business money, have money go direct to small businesses that will create jobs. And look, I know, Mayor Dinkins knows, the county executive knows, all of us know. Look, government's not going to create jobs. The private sector creates jobs. We are just a way of helping prime the pump. We don't expect us to just, give us money so we can have more government jobs. We're trying to reduce government. What we're saying is we want to be able to invest in our infrastructure and clean energy, have contracts go to the private sector, small businesses so they can grow their economy so that we can create more jobs. And that's all it's about. If you leave here today and say, what did Doug Palmer talk about? He said he talked about going to the liquor store. No, he talked about a donation. And the nation's mayors are talking about a donation back to cities so that we can invest and create the jobs that is so needed in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Palmer. Mayor Swazi.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I'm very, Mayor, you were talking about how you didn't know why you were invited here today. And Nutter was saying, why was I invited? I really don't know why I was invited here today. I called up Esther. I said, Esther, what, you invited me to come here. Why did you? She said, you're brilliant. We wanted someone smart, an elected official, and we couldn't get the mayor of Rochester to come. I'm very, very happy to be here, and I'm very pleased with the introduction I've received. Everybody said my name right. If you saw my name in the program, it's S-U-O-Z-Z-I, Tom Swazi. Now, people never get my name right. When I was first elected as county executive of Nassau County, I was the first Democrat with a Democratic legislature since 1917. So it was a very big story. The Democratic National Committee had a party here in New York City. I was invited to the party. Denny Farrell was one of the hosts of the party that night. They said, the new county executive from Nassau County, Tom Suzy. I looked over at my local chairman. I said, Jay, President Clinton is here. If President Clinton gets up there and calls me Tom Suzy, I'm going to be known as Tom Suzy by Democrats throughout the country from now on. So President Clinton gets up there. He starts to introduce all the elected officials. He never mentioned me at all. I said, Suzy would have been okay. So listen, I'm doing great already. I'm very happy. I'm the former county executive of Nassau County. I just lost my election by 386 votes. 0.2%, less than 0.2% of the vote out of 250,000 votes, which was down from 360,000 votes the first time I ran. And the reason I tell you that is because we have to look at the context of all the things we're talking about. We want to see change. We want to see the world made better. We're concerned that the disparity between rich and poor is getting bigger every day. We're concerned the disparity between those that are well educated and those who are not educated is getting worse and worse all the time, not just economically, but according to all the social statistics that you look at. We're concerned about global warming, and we want to see things happen regarding climate change. We want to see investment in clean energy. We want to see better investment in our infrastructure. We want to see more movement towards mass transit and away from roads. We want to see change. But this is one of the toughest times for change to take place because the public's in a very bad mood. What happened up in Massachusetts, what happened in the last November, like my election, I was up by 19% in the polls. No indication that I was going to lose this race. But the public's in a bad mood. So you've got to compare it to different times throughout American history. And there was a book written back in the 1980s by Arthur Schlesinger called Cycles in American History. And he talked about how there's a dramatic movement in the national psyche of America every 30 years. He compared 1920 to 1950 to 1980s. That goes from self-interest to public interest and back to self-interest again. Self-interest often seen as being more conservative, public interest being seen as being more liberal, and then back to self-interest again. So what's happened here in America over the past decade? We've seen some very big public interest type things where the public was very involved in the national conversation. September 11th, 2001. Everybody was involved. People wanted to do things. Unfortunately, the president at the time asked us to go shopping instead of change our nation dramatically. But the public was very interested in what are we doing as a nation? What's our place in the world? Iraq and Afghanistan, the recession, even the 2008 elections. Everybody was very involved in the public conversation. I would argue that much like the 80s and the 50s and the 20s, we're going to see starting now in 2010 more and more inward-looking self-interest. People don't want to know what you're going to do with health care reform. As the mayor pointed out, people aren't stopping him on the street about that. They're talking about jobs. People don't want to know about how you're going to dramatically change all the different things that don't affect them personally right now, immediately. I want to know, what are you going to do for my job, for my family, for my taxes, for my this, my that? They're very concerned. They're scared. It's legitimate. I mean, they're afraid. People are afraid about the future and about the economy and about their place in life. And it'll be tougher and tougher, I believe, over the next several years for us to do big, broad public change because people are going to be so concerned about just what are you going to do for me right now for me. So that's one thing we have to keep in mind when we look at this. The second thing we have to keep in mind is that what the federal tax policy is currently. Federal tax policy started mainly during the New Deal under FDR and later on in the Great Society under Lyndon Baines Johnson that said the blue states, everybody knows what I mean by the blue and red states, right? Raise your hand if you know what I mean by the blue and red states. I just want to see if I'm, okay? Not everybody knows, the younger people don't know, okay? It's this big thing, the elections back in 2000. The Northeast, the Rust Belt, the West Coast are the blue states. The Midwest, the Southwest, and the Southeast are the red states. It was really Democrat-Republican, but there's an interesting phenomenon you have to look at. Based upon federal tax policy that was set up under the New Deal and the Great Society, we said our blue states are so successful and we're doing so well and we've got so much money from our economies being so strong that we can afford to contribute to the national federal government and help the rest of the country to catch up with us, catch up with our economic policy, with our social welfare policy, with our environmental policy, with our civil rights policy, with our health care policy. We can invest. We can subsidize the rest of the country to help them to catch up with us. But what's happened is that now most of the blue states are donor states. We give a lot more to the federal government than we get back. Most of the red states, with the exception of Texas, are net taker states. They take a lot more than they give. No wonder they're against all the different federal policy we want to do. They're making out like bandits anyway with our funding. We're subsidizing the rest of the country. And at one time, it really made a lot of sense. But right now, wouldn't we love to have our money back here in New York State, or back in New Jersey, or back in Pennsylvania, that are massive donor states to the federal government? In New York State, this was a study that was started by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Right now, we send $55 billion a year more to the federal government than we get back. Wouldn't Governor Patterson love to have 10 billion of that back right now out of our 55 billion. So we're sending all of this money to the federal government to subsidize the rest of the country that's really, before the recession started, was growing by leaps and bounds compared to us, while we were just trying to hold on for dear life. So we've got to be looking at that in the context of what we're talking about. When we want money back in our cities, you know, one of the reasons I'm here is because we can't just talk about cities anymore. The mayor talked about in his remarks about the metropolitan region and how important the metropolitan region is. When you look at the major think tanks in the country, Brookings Institute is one of the preeminent ones, talks about how we look at the metro regions. And the top 100 metro regions in America, of which New York is number 2, Los Angeles is number 1, the top 100 make up 2/3 of all the people and 2/3 of the GDP. And you'll be much more effective politically if you get New York City, for example, to team up with Nassau County and Suffolk County and with Westchester County and Rockland County and even over to Newark and other northern parts of New Jersey. And then you got the different regions that you're each in your metro regions, okay? Metro regions will be much more powerful and effective in getting public policy change if they work with each other. And they're the ones who are donating all this money to the federal government that they're not getting back. So keep that in mind. So what Mayor Nutter and Mayor Palmer talked about as they face these difficult financial times, there's only two choices. You know, everybody thinks it's so complex with budgets for local governments. It's not that complex. You either have to raise revenues or you have to cut expenses. That's the only way to balance a budget. Raise revenues or cut expenses. That's happening all over America. Unfortunately, when you raise taxes or raise revenues for governments from getting it from the people or the businesses, or you cut expenses, often by cutting programs or jobs, you are not stimulating the economy.
Right.
You are contracting the economy. So while everybody's talking about stimulus, local governments had to contract. Which is why it's so important that the federal government invest in local governments. 10% of the employment in every metro region in America is from public employment. Whether it's teachers or cops or healthcare workers or youth board workers, whatever it may be, 10% of the employment is in these areas, and some of the most dramatically affected by the devastation of the economy. So we saw in the first round of stimulus money, we saw a big investment in Medicaid. Didn't help you guys, unfortunately. No. It helped the city of New York, helped the counties in New York State, because counties in New York and the city of New York have the terrible policy when compared to the rest of the country, in that we only get 50% of the money from the federal government for our Medicaid program. It's a federal program. It's every state in America. But in New York State, we only get 50% of the money from the federal government. And in New York State, uniquely, 25% comes from the state, and the other 25% comes from the city of New York and the counties. And so when that Medicaid money came, it plugged a big hole in a lot of the budgets. And I think that the president will probably do it again, because 2011 is going to be devastating for the states and places like New York City and the counties in New York State, again, because their pension costs are going through the roof, because everybody's pension funds are invested in Wall Street. Wall Street got killed, so where does the money come from to pay for the pensions? The taxpayers have to pay for it. So that's a whole big new set of money they need to have. And because the stimulus money was going to be gone for the Medicaid program. It's different in the other cities. We need to see investments in a couple major areas. One are these direct subsidies to states, and as the Mayor Nutter and Mayor Palmer both pointed out, they need direct operational subsidies in the cities, because the states are getting operational subsidies through this Medicaid money and through some education money, but the cities need it as well, because if you want to stimulate the economy, you can't be doing a counterproductive program of contracting at the same time in the cities, and they need direct operational subsidies. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to tighten their belt. They've been tightening their belt, and they continue to tighten their belt, as everybody in America has to do, but it's so gargantuan a change in such a short period of time, and most of the stuff is mandated. You have to do it anyway, that you need to have that money. So first is this Medicaid / education / public safety / whatever, direct subsidies to states and local governments to counterbalance the contraction that would otherwise take place. Secondly, you need money put into transportation. I would argue you can't let it rely on the same old boring formulas that have been used since time immemorial, which makes it much easier to invest in roads and much harder to invest in mass transportation. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of rules and processes and procedures you have to go through to invest in mass transportation, and roads, it's pretty straightforward. And we all know that for the benefit of our quality of life, the benefit of our economies, and the benefit of our environment and health, mass transportation is something we need to invest in. And you know what? It's probably more in the blue states where the cities are on top of that. Number 3, we need to invest in education because of the fact that we're going to see our states cut their education funding dramatically. And we know that in order for us to compete in the global economy, and in order for us to stop what is this growing disparity between rich and poor, educated and uneducated, we've got to do a better job educating our people. Probably one of the toughest challenges to do right now because it's not a benefit you're going to see in the short term. And last but not least, we need to see investment in green technology. Because green technology is the future for this country. And we can't just argue from the benefit of the environment. I was the New York State 2008 Environmentalist of the Year for the New York League of Conservation Voters. Okay, I believe in the environment, and we have to save the environment. But we're not going to get everybody to believe in the environment. So we have to make the other arguments as to why it's important to invest in green technology. The other reason is we need to stop using so much foreign oil because it's ruining we're sending all this money to countries and places that want to destroy us, and we're paying for it by sending all of our oil money to those countries. We got to get off this kick and start moving towards green energy. And it's the new internet as far as the economy goes. It's the new next big idea. It's a thing that'll put people to work. And you can't outsource jobs to a foreign country to replace the windows in New York City. You can't outsource the retrofitting for solar panels. You can't outsource the changing of the lights. You can't outsource all the different things that you need to do to make our buildings greener. So from every perspective, the environment, public safety and foreign policy, and from jobs in the economy, we have to invest in green technology. Now, all of these things are going to be very hard because everybody's in a bad mood. And the Republicans are taking a very big opportunity to go after the president and the Congress and the Senate to say, you're not doing anything. And when they try and do something, they say, don't do that. You know, the health care reform is a great example of the whole thing. We've been talking about health care reform for 50 years in our country. The president debated it throughout the campaign with Hillary Clinton, and then in the general election campaign, he came and said, we're going to do health care reform. They said, you're moving too fast. We talked about it the whole time. Whenever you want to try and change anything, whether it's infrastructure, education, green technology, changing in funding formulas, there will always be people that benefit from the existing situation, that benefit from the status quo. They don't want change because they benefit from the current way. And while we're all busy doing our stuff, going along in our everyday, they're working hard as they can to protect the status quo the way it is now. So change requires the smart people in this room who spend their time coming to conferences like this, who are well educated, who are dedicated to making the world a better place to live in, who want to see things get better for all the people, to keep on fighting, to keep on pushing, to keep on using your education and your passion and your desire to make things better for everyone. If we keep on doing that, we'll make the change we need to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Swazi. We have a short amount of time, about 10 minutes for Q&A. So I want to arrange it as such. We'll take a few questions from you right here at the microphone, 30 seconds or less. This is the Professor Fuchs model of questions. We'll take a few questions, and then we'll let the three mayors respond, and then we'll close out the panel for a short break. So please.
My name's Alice Labrie, and I'm a constituent of Congressman Charles Rangel. Real quick, I wrote a letter to Peter Ortzog, the budget director, because he was at NYU expounding on the need for college and et cetera. But I've raised the issue in a letter, et cetera. Not everybody wants to go to college, and not everybody can. So I asked him, I challenged him to tell me, what is the president going to do about vocational education?
Thank you.
I just want to, first of all, thank you. It was very insightful. I didn't hear anything about charter schools. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges around charter school in your district, your city?
I love charter schools, and I think the president does as well. I mean, one of the challenges in Philadelphia, we have more charter schools than any other school district. Pennsylvania loves government a lot. We have 501 school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Philly has more charters than anybody else. One of the challenges is the funding formula disadvantages the rest of the district. But other than that, charters work well. They're a choice option for parents. It's another way to keep folks with their child in public school. My daughter goes to public school. She's at a regular public school, not a charter. But so, I mean, I don't know that the feds are going to do anything in particular about charter schools. I think the bulk of the ARA dollars are going for school construction. You've got race to the top grants and that kind of stuff. But I mean, you know, education is at the heart and soul of turning around any city.
Joyce Miller, and I do consulting on infrastructure financing, energy, and transportation, and pension fund investments in infrastructure. Basically, the question is, there are a number of initiatives in Congress in the last year and that are still alive for this current year, and some of which have actually been presented over a number of years, which would address some of the concerns that you raise about infrastructure financing. Ranging from the energy bill, which Steve Israel, as Tom Swazi knows, has been very actively involved in, and creating opportunities for infrastructure financing and energy. The reauthorization of Safety Lou, which has been put on the back burner by the administration, which would also include large sums of money for new infrastructure in transportation. But it seems to me that from what you gentlemen were saying this afternoon, that one of the possibilities is to provide support for the members of Congress who have been involved in these initiatives, and even in other things like the proposal for the National Infrastructure Bank, which you would benefit from, would be some sort of an alliance among the municipalities and local government officials in the Northeast region. To put pressure on members of Congress, members of the Senate, and also some of the committee chairs who have been somewhat recalcitrant in looking at new ways of financing. And I would just wonder what you would think about establishing such an organization as opposed to these national councils, which encompass too many issues, too many interests.
Let's take this final question here.
Well, my question kind of mirrors that. I was interested in your thoughts on the National Infrastructure Bank and how it might help you in changing this relationship between the federal and the cities and the funding that could be used.
Great, and I'll add one more question to the panel, and that is, I believe the president announced his budget today. And so I want to know from you, all of you talked about direct investments in cities, but in a national environment where there's a sense that the federal government has to attack its own deficit, what additional challenge does that impose upon each of you for investments in cities?
Well, obviously the federal government, and I mean, the president announced, I guess it was last week, that some kind of freeze on some amount of spending. I mean, as was said earlier, whether it's local, state, or national, although they're very, very different, I mean, it does, at a certain level, come down to the two fundamentals, which is the same principle in business. I mean, you're either going to increase your revenues, your sales, your market share, or you have to significantly cut your costs. I mean, you don't have to be a genius. It pays to be smart, but you don't have to be a genius to do this. So, I mean, I want to go back to, I guess I have to get this out just in terms of a fundamental. And not to be partisan about it, and I know we want to be bipartisan. And, you know, I've worked with Republicans back in Philly and in the surrounding area, but on the federal level, you have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, Democratic Senate. And we were down in D.C. the other week. There was all this, you know, I guess the conference started on Wednesday. I had come in on Tuesday. I had a meeting with some folks over at the Treasury Department trying to convince them of how to aid cities just from a pure borrowing standpoint, utilizing TARP funds. You remember those funds that went to all the banks and the investment firms and everybody else except us. And unfortunately, Tuesday had just was happening, and then Wednesday, the conference started, and there's all this obsession about 60. 60 and 60, and oh my goodness, and we got to change health care because of 60. And every fourth grader in the United States of America knows that 59 is greater than 41. That 257 is greater than 178. I mean, let's be serious. People can talk all day long. You read the phone book, you read the Bible, you can read whatever you want to read. But 59 votes is a majority in the Senate, and if people want to filibuster and have all this conversation while 46 million Americans still don't have health care while you're debating the issue. The unemployment rate is at 10. It's in high double digits in many communities of color, African Americans and Latinos. Jobs and all the other problems in this country, a couple wars and all the other things going on, and we have to make people vote. That's why you're in a legislative body. Make them vote every day. And just have fights and have debates, and at some point in time, the American public is going to get tired of this nonsense. You have the majorities, use them. So I'm for the infrastructure bank. We need money back in cities. Our infrastructure is crumbling. I cannot afford to pay for all of that infrastructure. Our pension fund got hit by a 17% loss in the past year, not because we don't know how to manage money, but in early January of 2008, the market was still in upwards of 13,000 on the Dow Jones. At its low point, it was at 6,500. We lost 70% in value, and we actually still beat our benchmarks, as insane as that sounds. We actually did better than other pension systems. But that cost me $500 million over the next couple of years that I don't have. Right out of the general fund, over to the pension system. It's less recreation, less libraries, less police, less fire, less of everything. And we have no means of making up those kinds of deficits in the near term. That's why the federal government has to get back in the business of cities. Use the power that we have and run over them.
And if I could, I can't be more articulate than Mike. I just want to, go back to something. There's no way I followed this young man. There's no way you should lose good elected officials like this and some others. And I think people, talk about the courage of your convictions and those kinds of things. And I think it has to be rewarded. When you have people that want to take on special interests, whether it's the police unions or fire unions, whether it's the teachers unions, if you want to look at real change, look at Race to the Top, or I know that Secretary Duncan, I get Duncan and Donovan mixed up.
Yeah, Sean, right.
Duncan, education, I know them both, but Duncan from education, there's a move afoot to try to have more mayoral control. In some instances, that's a good thing, and some it's not. But if you're still going to be restrained by unions and not being able to do these things or those things, it's not going to change. And if you have elected officials, whether they're in Congress and Senate, county executives or mayors, or even people on city council, that want to stand up and do what's right, they have to be supported. Mm-hmm. I see people, well, I don't have to go to city council meetings, thank goodness on that. But I hear tales that it's a good piece of public policy that goes through, and 3 people will show up and say no, and it'll turn around some people that they told me they were voting for. And I said, what happened? 3 people came. 3 people? I mean, you think you're going to operate in a phone booth where you're in the dark? You're going to, you have to be able to, well, some people came. Well, yeah.
Right.
A lot of times more people are for things, but they don't come.
Right.
And I think
we're
it's
smart enough to do
critically-
the right thing on our own.
Yeah, it's critically important when you see the president standing up and do what he does, when you see even Mayor Bloomberg stand up to look at some of the things that he's fighting, they got to be supported. And so, folks, I think this is up to all of us to do it. And like Mike Nutter said, Mayor Nutter said, 59 is more than 41. Make them vote. Don't be paralyzed by this, and continue to fight. That's what made our nation great, and that's how we're going to get back to having the good folks win. Because, the only way that bad things happen is if, good people do nothing. I don't want to start talking about the evil and that, so I wanted to change it a little bit. Because they're all good people, but that's the way things happen. And if you don't start coming to meetings or standing up and talking about this is wrong, then we're going to be in an even worse situation.
Just quickly on the National Infrastructure Bank, the way that the idea behind it is that we start putting money in a more flexible entity that can reward investment to those places that they think will have dramatic change and make things better, instead of the way we do it now, which there's 108 different federal transportation programs. 108 programs. It's absurd. There should be 4 programs. And there's 108 different programs that over the years, law was passed, the thing was passed, and then they just accumulated over the years. It's 108 different programs. And, high-speed rail is great that they just invested a bunch of money in that, and that's a great thing. You don't want to do it everywhere. You want to do it in certain places. You need to invest in freight. There was just an article on the front page of our local paper, Newsday, out on Long Island today, about how freight has gone up, trucking has gone up so much dramatically, accidents have gone up dramatically on Long Island. But you have to do a freight rail program, or it'll just keep on getting worse. And that's a lot of places in the country that have that type of problem. You have to invest it, again, in mass transit, and not just in highways, and make it easier to do so. You need to do things like congestion pricing, even though I know everybody hates that idea, but I mean, you got to do it. So, but change is hard. And right now, the angry talk that we hear now, like the Tea Party movement you hear right now, that talk has always been there. That's not a new movement. There've always been a small group of very angry people out there talking about how things really stink. Okay? The problem is that people are listening now because people are upset and they're scared. And they're finding there's nobody else speaking to them except for that voice. And that they're finding a receptive, fertile ground. So there's got to be also equally, I don't want to say loud, but equally effective voice that talks about why change is important. Because, what I saw in my race and what you'll see in a lot of races is that less people are showing up because they're just numb, like this whole thing I was talking about before about, that everybody's just exhausted from all the public interest stuff we've done. People will not show up, and those people that do show up will be people that are angry. So it really has to, it's important that it's Pollyannish sounding, but you have to get this conversation going a little more intense. And I think that what Mayor Nutter said before is a very interesting idea. In keeping with the idea of the president showing up and confronting people that oppose him directly and having the conversation, it moved the conversation forward. Maybe we need to have that conversation in Congress and let people filibuster, let people debate, and let them have at it, and go back to what we really believe in.
American public
and
will
maybe
do.
people will actually do the right thing because we believe that people are basically good.
Well, on that hopeful note, no pun intended, let's thank our panel, Mayors Palmer, Nutter, and Swazi.